"Throw that calf into the pit," the boss ordered, until a pregnant nun did something incredible. Comment and tell me what you thought of this story. Give it a rating from 0 to 10, and let me know what city you're watching from. I really want to know if you enjoyed it, and I'd love to get to know you better, so please subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on you. I'd never seen a pregnant nun before that day, and I never imagined that a woman dressed in white, with her belly swollen and her feet covered in red mud, would take a shovel from my hands and walk toward the pit like she was heading to Sunday Mass. My name is Frank. I'm 42 years old, 30 of them spent inside the Bom Retiro Ranch, which sits at the edge of everything, past the last county road, where the pavement gives way to memory. Out here, the sun doesn't play games. It squeezes the earth until it cracks. At night, the silence weighs so heavy you can hear the grass wither. I've seen a lot in this life. I've seen drought kill off an entire herd. I've seen grown men cry over a dead steer. I've seen a boss lose his mind. But I had never seen anything like this. It all started on a Tuesday, dry as bone. Tiger, the red-coated calf we raised by hand from the day he was born because his mother died giving birth and we bottle-fed him for weeks, started acting strange. He stopped eating. His eyes went dull. Roy, the foreman, called the boss. Victor arrived at the pen with a stone face, looked at the animal for 5 seconds, and handed down his verdict. Throw that calf into the pit before he infects the rest. Everyone stood still. Dale looked at me. Charlie dropped his head. Nobody said a word, because nobody challenges Victor. He inherited this land from his father, and along with the land, he inherited a way of giving orders that doesn't leave room for conversation. When he speaks, you do what you're told, plain and simple. I picked up the shovel. I walked to the far end of the pasture where we usually dug the pits to bury dead animals. The ground was hard as concrete. I started digging slowly, feeling the sun burn the back of my neck. Tiger was back in the pen, lying down, breathing heavily. I tried not to look at him. That's when she appeared. She came down the dirt road alone, carrying a canvas bag on her back. Her white habit was dusty. Her belly shifted under the fabric. She stopped at the gate, asked permission, and came in. She said she was from the missionary order out of Nativity, visiting families in the region. Victor shrugged. He told Rose, the cook, to bring her a glass of water. The nun drank slowly, thanked everyone, and stood on the porch looking out at the ranch. When she heard Victor give the order again, louder this time because I had stopped digging, she turned her head and asked, "Is the calf sick?" Victor looked at her the way you look at a fly on your plate. He is, and he's getting buried before he spreads it to the others. She went quiet. Then she walked over to where I was standing, stretched out her hand and said, in the calmest voice I have ever heard in my life, "Give me the shovel." I looked at Victor. He gave a slow nod, half curious, half annoyed. I handed her the shovel. Sister May, that was how she introduced herself afterward, took the tool, adjusted its weight in her hands and started digging, but not where I had been digging. She walked about 10 feet to the side, chose a spot near a rise in the ground, and started opening a hole there. She dug deep. She dug fast. Her belly swayed with every strike, but she did not stop. Nobody said anything. We all just stood there watching. When she finished, she asked us to bring the calf over. Dale and Charlie carried Tiger to the spot. He was limp, barely holding on. She asked us to lower him into the hole. We did. Then she covered the hole with straw, laid a thin layer of dirt on top, and tamped it down with the flat of the shovel. "There," she said. "He's buried." Victor looked at her without fully understanding, but satisfied enough not to ask questions. He went back inside. The ranch hands returned to work. Rose called the nun inside. I stood there alone, staring at that mound of earth, feeling that something was not right. That night, I could not sleep. I lay on the wooden bed in the bunkhouse, staring at the tin roof, thinking about Tiger. We raised that animal from his very first day. We warmed the milk in our hands and fed it to him. We taught him how he was under the ground. I got up before dawn, pulled on my boots and stepped outside. The moon was full. A weak wind moved through the dry grass. I walked to the hole. I stopped. I listened, and I heard a low moan coming from inside the earth. I stepped back. My heart hammered. Tiger was alive. I ran to Rose's house and knocked on the door. She opened it in her nightgown, startled. "Rose, Tiger's alive," I said, barely catching my breath. She put her finger to her lips, told me to keep quiet, and pulled me inside. She lit the oil lamp. She sat down in the cane chair and let out a long breath. "I know," she said. "How do you know?" "Because I saw the nun go out before dawn last night, and I saw her come back with dirt on her hands." I stayed quiet. Rose got up, grabbed an old cloth, wrapped some pieces of bread inside it, and handed it to me. "Take this. If she shows up again, give it to her, and don't say a word to anyone." I went back to the hole. I sat on the ground nearby, close to the rise of earth, and waited. About 2 hours later, I saw a white shape approaching. It was her. Sister May stopped when she saw me. We looked at each other in the dark. "I'm not going to tell anyone," I said. She took a deep breath. Then she knelt beside the hole, brushed away the thin layer of dirt, and opened a space in the straw. Tiger was inside, breathing slowly. She reached in, touched his head, and murmured something I could not make out. "He's not really sick," she said without looking at me. "It's just a skin infection, common in drought. I've treated it before. Before you were a nun. Before a lot of things." She took a small glass bottle from her bag, dropped some liquid onto a damp cloth, and rubbed it along the calf's coat. Tiger groaned softly, but did not try to move. "Were you a vet?" I asked. "I was a lot of things. Now I'm just this." She covered the hole again, stood up with difficulty, held her belly, and looked up at the sky. "You shouldn't be doing this," I said, "not in your condition." "I know, but I also can't help it." That was the first time I saw fear on her face, not fear of Victor, fear of herself, fear that she was pushing too far. But even so, she came back the next night, and the night after, and the night after that, and I kept watch without fully knowing why, only knowing that if she got caught, I would be there. Jake was the first one to get suspicious. He was the youngest hand on the ranch, maybe 23, boyish face, and a wary look about him, like someone who hadn't yet learned to keep his head down. He'd been working with us for about 8 months, ever since he came in from the next county over looking for work. He was good at the job, but he noticed too much. On the 5th night, he followed me. I was walking slowly through the pasture, carrying a thermos of warm water Rose had prepared. The moon was half hidden behind the clouds. When I got close to the hole, Sister May was already there, kneeling, running her hand along Tiger's head. The animal was more alert now, trying to lift his head when she came near. That's when I heard a twig snap behind me. I spun around. Jake was standing about 15 feet back, eyes wide, staring at the whole scene like he was seeing a ghost. May stood up slowly, held her belly, and faced him. Nobody spoke for about 10 seconds. "He's alive," Jake said, more to himself than to us. "He is," I replied, "and you didn't see anything." He took a step back. "Victor's going to kill you both if he finds out." "Then don't let him find out," May said, her voice steady. Jake looked at her, then at the hole, then at me. He turned around and walked away fast, almost running. He disappeared into the dark. May let out the breath she had been holding. "He's going to tell," she said. "Maybe," I said. "But if he does, we'll know soon enough." She finished tending to Tiger, covered the hole again, and left without another word. I stood there, feeling the cold of the early morning rise up through my legs, turning over in my mind how all of this was going to end. For the next 2 days, Jake didn't speak to me, didn't speak to anyone. He was quiet at lunch, worked in silence, avoided even looking in my direction. Rose noticed. Dale noticed. But nobody said anything. It was on Sunday that things fell apart. Donna, Victor's niece, had arrived at the ranch on Friday to spend the weekend. She was a woman of about 25, educated, sharp-looking, but with a way of watching things that made you uneasy. She always seemed to be looking for something to catch, and she adored her uncle. She defended him from everything, believed he was the most fair-minded man in the world. That Sunday morning, Donna was sitting on the porch drinking coffee when she saw Jake walk by carrying a bucket. She called to him, "Jake, come here a second." He stopped, turned slowly, walked up to the porch. "Yes, ma'am." "You've been acting strange these past few days. Did something happen?" "No, ma'am. Everything's fine." "You sure?" He swallowed hard, stared at the floor. "Yes." Donna smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "Because I noticed you and Frank have been going out before dawn, and that nun too. And I got to thinking, what could be so important out there in the dark?" Jake went pale. He didn't answer. "You can go," she said, still smiling. He left the porch nearly stumbling. He came straight to me. "Frank, we're done for," he said, his voice shaking. "Donna knows something. She asked about us going out before dawn." My stomach dropped. I went straight to find Rose. Found her in the kitchen washing pots. "Victor's niece is onto us," I said. Rose stopped scrubbing. She dried her hands on her apron. "Then we need to move Tiger out of there, today, before she goes snooping around." "Move him where?" Rose thought it over. She looked out the window toward the back of the ranch, where the rocky outcrop people called the sanctuary sat. It was a place nobody went to. Victor wouldn't set foot there if his life depended on it. He said his father had fallen from the top of those rocks decades ago and near died. Ever since, he avoided that corner of the property. "The sanctuary," Rose said. "There's a small cave behind it. We can hide him there." "And how do we get the animal up there without anyone seeing?" "Before dawn. Tonight." That night, Rose, Charlie, Jake, and I met near the hole. May was already there, waiting. When I told her the plan, she shook her head. "I'm going with you." "No, you're not," I said. "You can barely walk with that belly. And if anyone sees you up on those rocks, Victor will know right away that you were behind all of this." "I don't care." "Well, we do," Charlie said, his voice rough. "You've already done more than enough. Now let us handle this." May took a long breath. She looked at Tiger, who was already on his feet inside the hole, stronger than when he'd been placed there. She ran her hand over his head one last time. "Take care of him," she said, looking at me. "I will." We got Tiger out of the hole. He was still weak, but he could walk. Charlie grabbed an old rope, made a loose loop around the calf's neck, and started guiding him slowly. Jake went ahead, watching to make sure no one was coming. Rose kept watch near the house. I walked behind, steadying Tiger when he stumbled. The walk to the sanctuary took nearly an hour. The ground was uneven, covered in loose rock. Tiger tripped twice, but didn't give up. When we reached the cave, a small hollow between the boulders, hidden behind a wild cedar tree, we guided the calf inside carefully. Charlie left water and a handful of grass. We covered the entrance with dry branches to hide it. "I'll be back tomorrow," Charlie said. "I'll bring more feed. Nobody comes out here, he'll be fine." We walked back to the ranch in silence. When I got to the bunkhouse, I lay down and closed my eyes. But sleep wouldn't come. I kept thinking about Donna's face, the way she had looked at Jake, and how long we had before everything collapsed. The next morning, Victor called everyone to the yard. We gathered around him. Donna stood at his side, arms crossed. Victor looked at each of us slowly, like he was searching for the guilty one. "Does anyone here want to tell me something?" he asked. Nobody answered. Because my niece tells me people have been out wandering around at night, and I want to know why. Silence. Victor took a step forward. Frank, you know anything about this? I looked at him. My mouth went dry. No, sir. He held my gaze. Then he looked at Jake. What about you? Jake opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I speak. And that was the moment Jake broke down. Jake couldn't get the words out. He stood there trembling, mouth open, nothing coming. Victor stepped toward him, and I saw the exact moment fear took over the boy completely. But before Victor could get close, Charlie stepped forward. Boss, we were hunting armadillos. Victor stopped. He turned to look at him. Armadillos? Yes, sir. There's one that keeps digging holes near the bunkhouse. Was causing damage. We went out before dawn to catch it. Victor stared at Charlie, then looked at me, then at Jake. None of us blinked. Did you catch it? No, sir. Smart little devil. Donna let out a quiet laugh but said nothing. Victor stood there a few more seconds, then nodded and dismissed everyone. We all went back to work in silence. But I knew that wasn't going to be the end of it. That afternoon, Sandra arrived at the ranch. She was an agricultural inspector, came by every month for a routine check. A tall woman, close to 40, no nonsense, didn't tolerate excuses. Victor didn't like her, but he had to keep the contract going because it was a requirement from the bank that financed part of the herd. Sandra climbed out of her truck, gave Victor a brief nod, and went straight to the pen. She started examining the herd and recording everything on her clipboard. Dale was nearby, fixing a fence. She stopped beside him. How many head did you lose this month? None, ma'am. She looked at him over her glasses. None. You sure? Dale swallowed. Yes, ma'am. And that red calf I saw here last month, the one you were bottle feeding. He's fine. He's out in the pasture. Where? I want to see him. Dale went white. He looked at me. I had no idea what to do. Sandra crossed her arms. Where's the calf? Dale? That's when Donna came out of the house, walking over with a smile on her face. The calf died, Sandra. My uncle had him buried about a week ago. Sandra wrote something on the clipboard. Cause of death. Illness. My uncle thought it was best to isolate him before he could infect the others. I see. And where was he buried? Donna pointed toward the far end of the pasture. Out there. Want to see? I do. The two of them walked together toward the hole. I followed, my heart beating out of rhythm. When they arrived, Sandra looked at the mound of earth, crouched down, picked up a handful, and smelled it. Fresh earth, she said. Turned recently. He was buried a week ago, Donna repeated. Sandra looked at the hole, then looked around. She saw the shovel marks on the side, the straw still scattered between the clods of dirt. Open this hole, she said. Donna blinked. What? Open it. Now. I need to confirm cause of death for my report. Donna looked at me. I looked at the ground. She called Victor. He came over grumbling, irritated, but when Sandra explained it was required by sanitation protocol, he had no choice. He told Dale and me to grab the shovels. We dug slowly, knowing there was nothing down there to find. When the hole was deep enough, Sandra climbed in and started sifting through the earth with her own hands. She found the straw. She found the branches. But she did not find Tiger. She climbed out, brushed her hands on her pants, and looked straight at Victor. Where is the calf? Victor's face went red. He was here. I gave the order to bury him. Then someone dug him up, or he was never really buried. Donna opened her mouth to speak, but Sandra raised her hand. I'm going to walk this property, and if I find that calf alive, you're all going to have to explain to me why you lied. Victor was shaking with anger, but there was nothing he could do. Sandra was a government inspector. If he got in her way, it would only make things worse. Sandra began walking the property. She passed the pen, past the bunkhouse, past Rose's house, and on her way back, she stopped and looked toward the back of the ranch, toward the sanctuary. What's out there? She asked. Nothing, Victor said too quickly. Just rocks. Then you won't mind if I take a look. She started walking. Victor stayed behind, his face in knots. Donna went after her. I went too. I didn't know what was about to happen, but I knew I couldn't let Sandra get there alone. The walk to the sanctuary took about 20 minutes. Sandra climbed the rocks easily, checking every crack and shadow along the way. When she got close to the cave, she stopped. She stared at the dry branches we had placed across the entrance. "There's something here," she said. She moved the branches aside. She looked inside, and she saw Tiger. The calf was lying down, chewing grass, eyes bright in the shadows. When he saw Sandra, he lifted his head and let out a soft, low call. Sandra looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned to me. "Who did this?" I didn't answer. She looked at Tiger again. She stepped into the cave, crouched beside him, examined the skin, the coat, the eyes. She ran her hand over his head gently. "Treated infection," she murmured. "Someone took care of him." Donna was standing at the cave entrance, white as a sheet. "My uncle didn't know anything about this," she said, her voice faltering. Sandra stood up, stepped out of the cave, and faced me directly. "Frank, I'm only going to ask this once. Who treated this calf?" I breathed in. "The nun." Sandra closed her eyes, opened them again. "What nun?" "Sister May. She was passing through the ranch. She heard the order to bury the animal, and she did what she thought was right." "Where is she now?" "She left. Victor made her go." Sandra wrote everything down on her clipboard. She capped her pen. She looked at Donna. "Go back to the house and tell your uncle I need to speak with him right now." Donna left almost at a run. Sandra stood there watching Tiger. Then she looked back at me. "You've got guts, Frank, but guts don't pay the bills." "I know. This calf is alive because someone disobeyed a direct order from the property owner. And this is not going to end quietly." "I know that too," she sighed. "But I don't work for Victor. I work for the state. And my job is to make sure animals are treated properly. This animal was treated, so I'm going to file my report, and Victor is going to have to answer for this." That evening, Sandra called the state regulatory office. The following morning, 2 inspectors arrived at the ranch with an official vehicle. Victor was called in to give a statement. We stood in the yard, watching from a distance. Rose was trembling. Jake couldn't look at anyone. Charlie stood with his arms crossed, jaw set. And I could only think about Sister May, that pregnant woman who picked up a shovel and decided that a calf deserved to live, no matter what it cost her. The inspectors spent the entire morning on the property. They examined the herd. They went through the paperwork. They checked everything. And when they were done, they called Victor in for a private meeting inside the house. We waited 1 hour, 2 hours. When Victor came out, his face was gray. He looked at us, said nothing. He got in his truck and drove away. The inspectors stayed behind. They said the ranch would be placed under a formal intervention, that everything would be reviewed, and that any violations would be dealt with firmly. Donna walked out crying. She got in her car and left too, and that was when I saw Sister May coming back down the dirt road, with a woman in a white coat beside her and another one dressed in professional clothes. She had come back, and she hadn't come alone. Sister May stopped at the gate and looked at the ranch the way you look at a battlefield after the fighting is done. The woman in the white coat was a doctor. You could tell by her serious manner and the bag she was carrying. The other one in the business suit was a social worker. She introduced herself when she reached us. "Good afternoon. My name is Christine. I'm here with Sister May. She filed a formal complaint regarding the working conditions and animal treatment on this property." Roy, the storeman, went wide-eyed. Rose put her hand over her mouth. I stood still, trying to understand what it all meant. The doctor asked permission and led May to the shade of a tree. She had her sit on a small stool that Rose rushed over to bring. She began checking her blood pressure, pulse, and belly. May allowed it, quiet, but never took her eyes off the ranch. The inspectors came out of the house with a folder full of papers. One of them called Christine over. They spoke quietly for a few minutes. Then they called the rest of us. Me, Charlie, Dale, Jake, Roy, and Rose. "How long have each of you worked here?" the inspector asked. We answered one by one. Me, 30 years. Charlie, 22. Dale, 15. Jake, 8 months. Roy, 18 years. Rose, 27. "Does anyone here have an employment contract on file?" Silence. "Are wages paid on time?" Roy lowered his head. "Sometimes it's late." "How late?" 3 months, Dale said, his voice barely above a whisper. The inspector wrote it all down. Then he asked about the living conditions in the bunkhouse, about the food, about working hours. We answered everything. There was nothing left to hide. When it was over, the senior inspector looked at us and said, "You are entitled to receive everything that's owed to you. You are entitled to receive everything that's owed to you, and the owner will be required to put everyone's situation in order. If he doesn't, this ranch does not reopen." It was the first time in 30 years I heard someone talk about rights inside that property. May stood up slowly, helped by the doctor, and walked over to where we were standing. She stopped in front of me. "Where's Tiger?" she asked. "At the sanctuary. Sandra found him. He's doing well." She closed her eyes and breathed deep. When she opened them again, there were tears running down her face. "Thank you," she said, "for taking care of him when I couldn't." "You took care of him first," I answered. "We just finished the job." Christine called May over and said they had to leave, that she needed to rest. May agreed, but before going, she took a small notebook with a green cover out of her bag and handed it to Rose. "It's all in there," she said. "How to treat the most common drought ailments. For when I'm not around." Rose held the notebook with both hands, like someone holding something sacred. "Ranch." Then at us. "I don't know, but if I do, it won't be as a nun." She got in the car. The doctor got in on the other side. Christine walked around, started the engine. The car began moving slowly down the dirt road. We all stood watching until the dust disappeared over the horizon. That afternoon, Sandra came back. She brought special feed for Tiger, medicine to finish the treatment, and a list of instructions for us to follow. Charlie wrote everything down with the most serious face I had ever seen on him. "He'll be fine," Sandra said, "but he still needs care. No strain, clean water, good feed." "Leave it to me," Charlie replied. And he meant it. Every day, morning and afternoon, Charlie climbed up to the sanctuary with food and fresh water. He talked to Tiger, ran his hand along the calf's head, just sat there keeping him company. He said the animal deserved it after everything he had been through. Victor came back to the ranch 3 days later. He didn't speak to anyone. He stayed locked inside the house all day. Late in the afternoon, Roy was called in. He came out half an hour later with an envelope in his hand. "He wants everyone together," Roy said, his voice unsteady. Victor came out onto the porch and looked at us. He seemed 10 years older. "The ranch is going into a 6-month intervention," he said without preamble. "I won't be managing anything here during that time. They're putting an administrator in charge, and you're all going to receive everything that's owed. Contracts on file. Everything squared away." Nobody cheered. We just stood there taking it in. "I'll be staying in town during this period," Victor went on. "When it's over, I'll come back. Or I won't. I haven't decided yet." He went inside, picked up a bag that was already packed, and carried it to his truck. He went around to the driver's side and got in. Before starting the engine, he looked at us one last time. "It was just a calf," he said, his voice worn out. "That's all it was." And he drove away. Roy opened the envelope. Inside was the back pay for everyone. Exact. Separated out. With each person's name written on a small slip of paper. Rose started crying. Dale sat down right there on the ground. Jake stared at the money in his hand like he couldn't believe it was real. Charlie tucked his into his pocket, turned to me and said, "I'm buying good feed for Tiger." I laughed. For the first time in weeks, I really laughed. That night, we gathered in Rose's kitchen. She brewed a strong pot of coffee, cut a thick cornbread loaf, and served everyone. We sat there talking quietly, going back over everything that had happened. "Do you think the nun's baby will be okay?" Jake asked. "Of course," Rose said without hesitation. "A woman that strong doesn't lose. She's going to have that boy and raise him right." "Think she'll ever come back?" Dale asked. "I don't know," I said. "But if she does, we'll welcome her properly." Charlie raised his coffee mug. I said. "But if she does, we'll welcome her properly." Charlie raised his coffee mug. "To Tiger," he said. We all raised ours. "To Tiger." 2 weeks later, the administrator arrived. A calm man in his 50s, the kind who listened before he spoke. He reorganized everything, brought in more people, set things right. The ranch began to breathe again. Tiger came down from the cave. Charlie brought him back to the pasture, walking slow, talking to the calf the whole way. When Tiger set his hooves on the grass again, he let out a loud bellow that echoed across the entire ranch. Rose said it was the sound of freedom. I figured it was the sound of someone who had come home. A month later, I received a letter. No return address. Just a plain white envelope with my name written by hand. I opened it. Inside was a short note. "Frank, the baby was born. A boy. I named him Emmanuel. He's well, I'm well. Thank you for everything. God bless you all. May." I folded the note and put it in my pocket. Then I walked up to the sanctuary. I sat on a rock, looked at the sky, and let the wind hit my face. I thought about everything, about the pregnant nun who picked up a shovel and decided a calf was worth saving, about the men who chose